Welcome back to another episode of Investies. I'm your host, Linda Garcia, and this week on the podcast, we will be discussing how Donald Trump leveraged the stock market in order to boost his net worth and potentially pay some debt. Trump is currently facing 91 felony counts across 2 state courts and 2 different federal districts. He's already lost a civil suit in New York, as well as a pair of large defamation judgments. Any of these counts could potentially put Donald Trump in prison. But I think at this point, most of us are feeling like that will never happen. Watching all of this unfold in real time, I can see how it makes it very difficult for marginalized community members to gain any trust in the judicial system and also continue to lose trust in democracy. In a February ruling, a New York judge found that the former president inflated his assets for financial gain. They had found that for years, Donald Trump had lied about his wealth on financial statements and then used those financial statements to secure loans and make deals in which he built his real estate empire. The former president was ordered by this judge to post a $355 million bond with a 9% interest. It's currently summing up the total of $554 million. And according to a 92-page decision that the judge wrote, he states, "The frauds found here leap off the page and shock the conscience." Now, let's take it back to 2021, when Donald Trump founded a company called Digital World Acquisition Corp. On the website as of this week, Digital World Acquisition Corp is described as a blank check company formed for the purpose of effecting a merger, capital stock exchange, asset acquisition, stock purchase, reorganization, or similar business combination with one or more businesses. While we may pursue an initial business combination target in any business or industry, we intend to focus on combining with a leading tech company. This is the description from a company that Donald Trump founded. There are no other founders listed. He founded this company as a SPAC. A SPAC is an acronym for Special Purpose Acquisition Company. A Special Purpose Acquisition Company is a publicly traded company created for the purpose of acquiring or merging with an existing company. SPACs are also known as a shell company or a blank check company, which I find very fitting. The SPAC was listed on the New York Stock Exchange in September of 2021. Digital World Acquisition Corp's ticker symbol was DWAC. You can't make this up. DWAC, or Digital World Acquisition Corp, began trading for $9 a share, and then in October of 2021, DWAC made a bigly. I can't help it. It's too easy. They made a bigly announcement that they would eventually merge Truth Social into Digital World Acquisition. On that news, the stock ends up soaring, hits $97 per share, and then eventually drops down and sits at about $14 a share. I'm assuming that this drop occurs because the merger was supposed to take place in 2022. In 2023, DWAC Corporation gets hit with fraud charges from the SEC. The SEC stands for Securities Exchange Commission, and they regulate all of the publicly traded companies in the stock market. The SEC claimed that DWAC was misleading investors on the purpose of the company. They should have disclosed that the company would eventually merge with Truth Social Media. As part of the settlement, DWAC was ordered to pay $18 million in civil penalty fees. We're now caught up with all of the chisme on DWAC. That leads us into 2024. But before we get into that, let's stop for a quick commercial break. Investies, if you are enjoying this podcast week after week, if you find it beneficial, if you're learning from it, I ask you for a big favor. Please head over to Apple Podcasts and consider rating and reviewing the podcast. This really helps to amplify our work and shows the interest. We currently have so many of you listening to us weekly, but our reviews are not reflecting it. So I'm asking for a favor. Please, if you are enjoying this content, let me know by leaving a rating and a review. Thank you. And we are back. I realize that I've given you a lot of context on DWAC over the years. I want to make sure that we're understanding what a SPAC is, or a blank check company is, or a shell company is, as we move through understanding the stock market and the different strategies that exist. This is a really interesting one, considering that the person it involves can potentially become the next president of the United States. On Monday, March 25th, Trump is now faced with his deadline to pay the $454 million in bond. He was unable to make the bond payment. And so at court, the judge ruled that they would reduce his bond amount to $175 million, and that he is set to pay those $175 million within the next 10 days. Later on that evening, Digital World Acquisition Corp, or DWAC, completes its merger with Truth Social Media. The chess that Trump is playing blows my mind. I am sharing this with you today because I want us to look at this as a type of case study. We have to understand that on Monday morning, he was unable to make his bond payment. He gets an extension. Monday afternoon, all of a sudden, the merger finally takes place after it was originally supposed to take place in 2022. Through the merger, the ticker symbol of the company went from DWAC, DWAC, to DJT, for Donald J. Trump. By the way, as a side note, in the 1990s, Trump had a publicly traded company that he launched under the ticker symbol DJT that failed miserably and was called an embarrassment. It was then delisted from the stock exchange. So he has revived this ticker symbol, and within minutes of reviving it, the share price soars by 50%. The stock exchange immediately halts any exchanges from taking place on the stock because of that rapid increase. I haven't seen a halt, if I remember correctly, ever since GameStop. So when you halt something, it is a really big deal. We did witness a lot of halts take place at the beginning of COVID. This is a method that is used to calm down emotions. This is why it strikes me that we don't speak enough about emotions in the stock market. It is why I have an entire chapter on it in my book, because emotions play such a big part in the selling and buying of shares. And so the stock market will halt, meaning that it will pause all purchases on a specific share or the entire market overall, depending on what is taking place. They halt shares from being bought or sold on DJT in order to get the market to cool down. The stock market opens at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and by 9:50 a.m., they go ahead and resume trading on the stock, and we see that there are 6.5 million shares that were exchanged by that time. That's a really big deal. Trump's net worth as of late last night, March 26th, shot up to $6.5 billion. The company is no longer known as Digital World Acquisition Corp. And has now transitioned to Trump Media. And Trump Media released a statement that said, the ticker symbol pays direct homage to the company's former chairman and director and the 45th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump. We believe that the commencement of trading of DJT on the public markets testifies to Americans' demands for free speech platforms that reject the stifling censorship imposed by big tech. Trump owns 58.1% of Trump Media, and he holds 78.5 million shares. It's really important for me to share that this is already being looked at as a meme stock. A meme stock is something that surged alongside GameStop, which is just to memify stocks and have them garner interest through memes. It's also being looked as a hype stock, and it has already been nicknamed the Trump Pump. The name the Trump Pump is stemming from a scheme that takes place in the stock market known as a pump and dump. A pump and dump is when organized traders begin to pump up the price of a stock. The way they do this is by memifying the stock, by generating content around the stock, creating hype around the stock. Folks begin to buy in, and this pushes the share price up. Once the share price reaches a certain level, the organized traders go ahead and sell their shares, leaving everyone else with no returns, leaving everyone else with money that is lost in the market. So it is important to be very careful when you start to see a stock memifying the way DJT is memifying right now. I can tell you that the financials on this company do not look good. Not on the DWAC side and not on the DJT side. And not that there's two sides, but back when it was DWAC, there are financial statements for that company. And what I can tell you is that in those financial statements, they do have an excess in expenses when it comes to legal action. They don't have any details on exactly what was spent on legal activities, but $30 million were spent. People are speculating that those $30 million are spent on Trump's current legal costs. However, I do want to highlight that that is speculation. And while it wouldn't surprise us, given the recent crimes that he has been charged for, we still don't have evidence that he is in fact using the DWAC line item that says legal actions for his current legal fees. Where I am seeing this speculated, I have not seen anyone identify that DWAC was in fact hit with fines from the SEC. In fact, I haven't seen anyone talking about this. I have spent the last 3 days researching and looking specifically for old articles on DWAC so that I can try and understand the timeline of it. So it doesn't surprise me that folks are speculating in this way. With that being said, the financials for DWAC did not look good. And now that DWAC is Trump media, the financials that have been released for that company also are not looking healthy. Analysts are already scrutinizing the company and expect it to not be profitable. All in all, what is obvious is that this stock is strictly trading on momentum. It is not trading on any fundamentals. One of the reasons why I feel strongly about investing in the stock market is the potential liquidity that you can have when owning a stock, meaning that you can have access to cash almost immediately, not like having an investment in real estate where access to cash from a real estate investment is unpredictable in terms of how long it will take you to actually have hard, cold cash in hand. However, your shares may not be as liquid if you are the founder of the company, if you are an executive in the company, if you are part of the board of directors, if you are an employee and you're purchasing your shares directly through your employer. The game changes. There are rules and parameters because these folks have direct information on what is taking place with the company. So they put rules in place up to their discrepancy on when folks are able to buy or sell shares. With Digital World Acquisition Corp., they do have parameters in place. The current parameters are a 6-month lockup rule for shareholders that own more than 10%. I mentioned earlier that Trump owns 58%. So he would be unable, according to these rules, to sell his shares for a restricted period of time. However, there are speculations on other things that could potentially happen in order for him to get access to liquidity. Remember that he needs to come up with $175 million by next Tuesday. Two of the speculations that are going around right now is that he could transfer his shares to a trust and then use that trust as collateral for a loan. The other option is that he could potentially convince the board to let him sell shares. However, selling shares will lead to a price crash. And a lot of people can lose a lot of money. I would imagine that the folks invested in DJT is his actual base camp. And I'm just not sure that he would want to crash the stock and officially execute a pump and dump. However, maybe folks understand exactly what is taking place right now, and maybe they want to contribute to the fine, and they're okay with losing the money. Either way, we'll have to see what takes place in the next few days. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Investies. This conversation isn't over. We are just getting started. You can count on me to keep you posted. Investies is a Cosmic Standard and In Luz We Trust production. A special thank you to the team, Asia Simpson, Eliza Smith, and Jacob Winnick.